Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Estefany. I'm one of the volunteers of the Poet Stephen Spiritus Center, and I'm truly honored that you've chosen to spend the next few minutes with us. We'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we're currently in, and we pay our respects to all of the Aboriginal elders, past, present, and emerging. And before we move on to our initial prayer, I'd like us to take a moment to center ourselves. So if you feel comfortable, please close your eyes. Leave all the troubles, the worries, the to-do lists aside for a few minutes. Imagine a fluffy white cloud taking them away. Take a deep breath through your nose and out through your mouth. And again, breathing in calm, breathing out tension. And once more, we breathe in peace and breathe out any anxieties we're holding on to. And we're setting an intention of learning and understanding for today. And in this current vibration, we start with our prayer, with the prayer that our brother and teacher Jesus taught us. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. So be it. You may open your eyes back up. Hi again. Today's topic is I Understand You. And it is based in the chapter 10 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is this book here. But you can also find it easily on the internet. Like I always say, there's many sites you can download, or you can just look in Kardecpedia and search for specific topics. And chapter 10 is called Blessed Are the Merciful. This title comes from a section of Jesus's amazing Sermon on the Mount. And in full, the saying was, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Right? So this is very much the core of the topic today, which focuses on items 16 to 21 of that chapter, and they all talk about tolerance, right? And tolerance, if you look in the dictionary or if you ask Google, it has several definitions, but the one that relates the closest to what we're talking about today says tolerance is to have sympathy or indulgence for beliefs or practices differing or conflicting with one's own, right? So it's about accepting other people's ways and opinions, whether they match with ours or not. And interestingly, today's society is both a lot more tolerant, but also not quite tolerant enough. Right? So people today are a lot more accepting of a lot of things that were unheard of not such a long time ago. You know, women have got a lot more rights, as do children, vulnerable populations. There's in most places freedom of religious beliefs and freedom to express your opinions and to be different to the mainstream. For the most part, I know it's not always that way, but for the most part, in theory, that we do have that now, which was not available to us for a very long time, and in some places still today is not available. However, at the same time that we've got all these freedoms, we also seem to be um, more divided than ever. And we let all sorts of things divide us, right? So political beliefs separate countries and even families, religion, race, sexual preferences, even sports. Anything seems a good enough reason for us to dislike someone, to disagree with someone, right? And it is becoming incredibly widespread, this thing of you either with me or you're against me, or these sort of separate teams that people put themselves in, when we know that there is no such thing. We are all, it's one world, it's one family. We all come from the same place. We're all going to the same place, right? But criticizing comes very easily to most of us, right? And this is not even new. Jesus already warned us when he was here that we could easily see the mote. What's a mote? A mote is a tiny little speck of dust. So we can see the mote in someone else's eye. We can't see the beam in our own eye, right? So he was already warning us of our tendencies to see things on other people and not really look at ourselves. And could it be that when we criticize or when we complain about someone else, about something they do that irritates and that annoys us, could it be that we may do the same things? Or perhaps we don't do the same things, but could we do something else that is similarly annoying and irritating to other people? When we point fingers and criticize other people, do we take a moment to understand the reasons behind their behaviors? Do we have a full picture of that person's life, their circumstances? We've all heard the saying that to judge a person, you must first walk a mile in their shoes. But how often do we really do that? Assuming we believe in it, because it seems very reasonable, a very reasonable thing to do. But how often do we think about why the other person is saying or doing something, instead of just thinking of how that affects us? How does it make us feel? Because most of the time we only worry about ourselves. So if someone said something, and most of us are quite sensitive, so they say something and it hurts our feelings, or we didn't appreciate it, it wasn't exactly how we wanted them to be, right? But do we ever stop to think about the reasons or why that person would do that? Or perhaps that we often do the same things, especially those of us who talk a lot. We have multiple chances of saying the wrong thing, and do we ever stop to think that, we're not perfect, like we're pointing fingers and judging people and criticizing and complaining, but really, it bears thinking about sometimes, taking a step, looking at things from another perspective, from another point of view, or perhaps just letting things go a little bit, because when it is our turn to do something wrong, something annoying, something irritating, that we make a mistake, it is so nice when we receive that, when someone kind of lets us off the hook, lets it go, forgives us, like takes us as we are, with all our faults and all our our peculiarities. How nice is it to just be accepted exactly as we are, right? But then when it comes to taking on other people, we have this list and they have to tick everything everything on the list, or at least a high percentage of items on the list. And, we would love people to just, take us, as is. And even when we're trying to improve ourselves or whether we're not, it's, we all like to be accepted. So it is an interesting thing to think about, to walk a mile on other people's shoes, or to stop for a moment and try and look at the big picture, right? And not just that someone stepped on our foot or said something we didn't like, or did something that actually made our situation worse than it was before. And I'm not suggesting for a minute, that those are not valid feelings or considerations, because we're not here to let people walk all over us. That is definitely not what is being said in the gospel or by me in any way. But we do have to think, and Jesus always said to us that the measure that we use with others will also be used to measure us. So the measure you give is the measure you get. And perhaps here is where we get close to the really key issue. Because psychologists are very aware of that they have understood that when we are very critical and very harsh with other people, very often we are the same way with ourselves, right? So when we demand perfection of ourselves, why wouldn't we expect it from others, right? So some people work incredibly hard on being perfect, and so they expect nothing less from others. However, there's a big problem with that line of thinking or that kind of behavior. You probably see it coming. The thing is that none of us are perfect yet. One day we'll get there, but at the moment, none of us are perfect. So we're demanding from other people something that we don't have. So where's the fairness in that, right? So even though perfection is our goal, and that's what we are working towards, perfectionism is not a virtue at all. It is one thing for us to be humble enough to realize that we all have faults, we all have shortcomings, and to systematically work through them to try and improve ourselves. That's great. That is what we always talk about. It is another thing to put on a front to the world that all is well and that we have it all and everything is perfect. That kind of behavior is related to our ego. So that is not a virtue. We are trying, and doing our best to improve ourselves, but to pretend that we are perfect is always going to be, pretending at this point in time, right? So the harder we are on ourselves to portray that perfect facade, the more we demand from other people that they do the same, right? Not right. It's just so. Could it be that for us to start to understand one another, like the topic is saying, that I understand you. So for us to understand one another, for us to tolerate one another, which is the topic of the chapter, or at least this section of the chapter, that the first thing we need to do is to look at the person in the mirror, to look at our own behaviors and how we can do better, to realize that we too make mistakes, that, because like I was saying before, it feels so good to be forgiven. It feels so amazing when someone notices that we are struggling and decides to help us without judgment, without making us feel less than. because we are also, proud, or we have such big egos. Sometimes we don't even tell people, we don't even let people know that we're struggling, that we're going through something, right? So we don't know what's happening with other people. We don't know what's happening in their lives, why they're a certain way, why they do certain things. So the same way that it feels amazing when people, see us, really see us, or just accept and forgive us as we are. It's, we need to try and use the same measure. We can't expect something, from the others to us and not give it back, right? Because as St. Francis, in his magnificent prayer, said, it is in the giving that we receive. So we need to let the concept of give and take truly enter our lives and the way that we see the world, right? Not just me, me, me. Let's have a bit of us in there. So in this chapter, in the Gospel, a guardian spirit named Joseph tells us tolerance draws in peace and harmony, while intolerance only drains our energy, drives people apart, and causes hard feelings. When you look at it that way, there is no real choice, right? Who is after hard feelings, driving people apart, draining energy? And yet, how many of us are constantly exhausted and constantly having issues with people and constantly nursing hard feelings, or little things with different people, right? So it's really something to consider, to have a more to try and integrate tolerance in our lives, because we could all do with a bit more peace and a bit more harmony, I think. And look, we're not saying for a second that we should put up with bad behavior from others, or that, there are expected behaviors in society. There are laws, there are rules that need to be followed, that, when they are followed, they help everyone to be in a better place. This has become incredibly clear in these days of lockdowns and personal distance and contact tracing and all the things we're currently going through. We have a whole new set of rules that we're expected to follow, and some behaviors that were always there, that were always expected, are really showing how important they are, such as personal hygiene. How important is that? But that was always there, and that was always something that we knew we should do, but not everybody did it, did they? So it is okay to point out when someone is doing something wrong, or it is okay to discipline your children, or to show your family or your colleagues, your community, the correct way to do things, as long as, and I'm sure there's more items on this list, but I've only put 3. One, that you're 100% sure that your way is the correct way. Because, we all think we're right. And we can't all be right if we're not all doing the same thing. So, before you go pointing fingers and telling people what to do, make sure that your way is the correct way. Otherwise, perhaps we can have a talk, a discussion. We can, see, why that person does things their way and why do we do things our way. And maybe we're both wrong. Maybe there is, we're both half right and half wrong. We don't know. So be very careful about telling people that they're wrong without knowing whether you are actually right in the first place. And then when you do that, do it with love, with compassion, with understanding. Because I'm pretty sure everyone has noticed that it is so often how you say something a lot more than what you say that makes it effective. You know, the same thing said in a different way, it makes a whole lot of difference. And forgive the people for being wrong in the first place, because we are always doing wrong things and saying wrong things. You know, we can't be that harsh on other people if we expect to go through life without being judged in the same way, right? And some of you might say, well, you know, but how do you guarantee that, you know, if I do all these nice things, the other person is going to do the same? I'm really sorry to say that, but there is no guarantee. You can do all of those things. You can say things with kindness, with love, with compassion. And sometimes the other person may not hear it or may not accept it because they are not in that place yet. But isn't it a wonderful thing that you are in that place? When you think about it, you know, would you rather be, you know, lower yourself to be at their level, or just be who you are, be where you are, be who the person that you really want to be, and let them get there in their own, you know, in their own time? Because we have to remember Paul's words to the Corinthians, you know, because we have to do things from a place of love, right? Because love is patient and love is kind. Love does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude or self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not delight on evil, but rejoices with the truth. So we need to forgive ourselves for our own imperfections, because we all have them, and we have a lot of them. That's the first step. If we want to be able to understand others and forgive others for their imperfections, which we see a lot more easily than we see ours, but we start with ours. We start by forgiving ourselves. We start by coming from a place of love to ourselves, and then we can project that to others. But if we are always really hard on ourselves and criticizing ourselves and putting ourselves down, how are we ever going to project something different to other people? You know? So, and it is an important step for us to take, because who here can't do with a bit more tolerance in their homes, in traffic, in public transport, at work, in society in general? It's not a sign of weakness. It takes a lot of strength and courage to walk this path, to take action, to choose the narrow door. It is a lot easier to just sit back and complain and criticize and not do anything to improve the situation. But as I heard recently in a talk, someone said that there are no statues built for critics. So, to finish up, I'm going to read some words from John, who was a former bishop of Bordeaux, in the same chapter of the gospel that we are basing our talk today on. And he explains it really well when he says, "What do you ask when you seek God's forgiveness? Do you simply ask God to forget your transgressions? When you ask God for forgiveness, ask also for the strength not to repeat them. Plead for the courage to start on a new path, one illuminated by surrender and love, where you can grace your repentance with a sincere desire to repay your wrongs. And by the same token, when you forgive someone, don't be satisfied with just merely throwing a veil of forgetfulness over that person's wrongdoings, but rather wrap your forgiveness in love. Do for your brother or sister what you want God to do for you. In other words, substitute anger that soils with love that cleanses. Exemplify through your conduct the tireless compassion taught by Jesus. I know Jesus is a tough act to follow, but we have to start somewhere. And he came in here to show us the way, to give us the example, that it doesn't matter if we just say things and point our fingers. It is only our behavior and our actions that are really going to impact not only our lives, but other people in the way they see us and the way they act towards us. So let's now move on to our final prayer. Again, if you feel comfortable, please close your eyes, sit comfortably, relax your face, your jaw, your shoulders. Take a deep cleansing breath. Imagine your heart beating. Imagine that every beat emits a little spark of energy and love. How many times does your heart beat every minute? Look at all that loving energy that you can be generating all the time. So we're going to let this loving energy emanating from our hearts flow through our whole bodies. And our body is becoming so lovingly energized that this vibration is overflowing from us into our houses, into our neighborhoods. And we're going to intentionally send these vibrations of loving energy to the world. The world really needs this right now. So we're going to imagine our energies joining together and surrounding our beautiful blue planet. You may open your eyes again. Thank you so much for joining us again today. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure to have your company. And before we go, I just have a couple of notices to give. Melbourne is currently in lockdown, so we will be following the government's guidelines in terms of in-person activities. And so at the moment, we are back to online only, but we'll keep you informed through our social media channels. So please keep your eye out. But if you follow us in English, I mean, we've been online for a long time now. But one of these days, we'll go back in person as well. And we'll continue to stream the chats in case you're not able to go there in person. And the other thing is that our center continues to contribute with charities, one in Brazil providing food to the people who are going hungry as a result of the COVID crisis. And we're also continuing to give the breakfast packs to the homeless here in Melbourne. And it's very cold right now, so we also we normally give food in the breakfast packs, personal hygiene items, and now we're going to give them, jackets, coats, socks, blankets, sleeping bags, things like that, so they can weather this season. And normally we take donations of things, but as we are in lockdown, we can only really take donations in our bank account at the moment. But we really appreciate if you can contribute. You can find this information in our website and our Facebook and our Instagram. And so we ask that you contribute first and foremost with your prayers, but if it's within your realm of possibility, please also give the material help, because people are doing it really tough right now. And that's it for today. I want to wish you an amazing week full of health and peace and love and tolerance. And until we meet again, take care. Much love.